Hello, everyone. I'm Stacy Thompson, Director of Events here at Business Publications Corp. Thank you for joining us today for our second Fearless Focus event in our three-part virtual series. If this is your first time joining us, we're glad that you're here. We launched Fearless at the end of 2020. We knew that in addition to a weekly e-newsletter and other content, we wanted to have space for conversation and connection. And our Fearless Focus virtual event series was born, providing the opportunity for anyone around the state and beyond that can easily join us and be a part of the discussion. Over the last few years, our Fearless Focus series has covered a wide range of topics, including leadership, financial empowerment, advocacy, business ownership, risk-taking, healthcare, discrimination, and overcoming adversity. We have been fortunate enough to have an impressive list of panelists over that time who have shared their unique perspectives, stories, and ideas with our fearless audience to help drive these important conversations. Today, we dive into one of the most complex issues our fearless team has tirelessly covered, Iowa's childcare challenges. With our well-curated lineup of panelists, this conversation promises to be both engaging and insightful. So with that, I'll turn it over to our special projects editor, Emily Wood.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Stacy. As Stacy said, I'm Emily Wood, the Special Projects Editor at the Business Record, and we're so excited to have you join us for today's Fearless Focus. Our goal with Fearless is to empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. And to do that, we believe in the power of inspiration and connection. We're focusing on childcare today, which has been one of the most important topics that we've covered. Since Fearless began in 2020, childcare has been identified as one of the top issues to address by business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and our audience. We've reported about Iowa's unique challenges and solutions being implemented. In our gender issues survey this year, we asked, how big of an issue do you perceive access to affordable childcare in Iowa to be? Nearly 3/4 of respondents identified it as a major issue. And of respondents who identified as women or non-binary, the number was much higher. Today, we're talking to those leading the charge on addressing this. We've asked them to talk about the issues facing Iowa's childcare system, but our hope is to make today's discussion solutions oriented. We want to dig into the concrete actions that business leaders and policymakers can take to improve affordability and access. We have a great lineup to speak to you today. With us, we have Deann Cook, President and CEO of the Iowa Women's Foundation, Bethany Davis, Vice President of Early Childhood at Oakridge Neighborhood, Teresa Hubbell, Benefits Manager at Vermeer, Ashley Miranda, Assistant Director and Family Development Coordinator at Comigo Early Education Center, Renee Hansen, External Relations Manager at Sukup Manufacturing, and Dave Stone, Advocacy Officer at the United Way of Central Iowa. I've asked each of our speakers to start off by just telling us a little bit about why addressing childcare in Iowa matters to each of them and the organizations they work for. So Deann, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Emily. Iowa Women's Foundation is the only statewide organization dedicated to improving the lives of women and girls. And the way that we've chosen to focus that mission is on improving financial stability for women. There are many barriers that keep women from financial stability and achieving all they can in the workplace. But as the stats that were quoted earlier bear out, childcare is the first and biggest one that we must conquer so that women are able to achieve their full potential. So that's why Iowa Women's Foundation has gotten so deeply involved in solving the childcare crisis.
Thank you. And Bethany. Oh, Bethany, I think you might be muted, so.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. Addressing childcare problems in Iowa is important to Oak Academy because in spite of us being a NACE accredited and IQ4K level 5 program, we are having extreme difficulty attracting and hiring quality preschool staff and teachers, which severely limits the number of children we were able to serve in our center. So although we have the capacity to serve twice as many children as we currently are right now, we are unable to due to staff shortages. So overall, not only are staff shortages the issue, but it ripples into the fact that we are limiting the number of children in Iowa who have access to quality preschool programming. And as we all know, those preschool years are really and truly indicative of school performance and success in the later learning years.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Teresa.
Thank you. Vermeer Manufacturing is a heavy equipment manufacturer, both in the industrial and agricultural fields. We are worldwide, but the majority of our team members reside here in the state of Iowa. And understanding how difficult it has been to attract and retain skilled trades, as well as our professional team members, and knowing that, you know, over half of our employee base is millennial or Gen Z, and knowing that that age group is in the family bearing years, we want to make sure that our team members have access to quality and affordable childcare. So when they are here, they can focus on what they're doing at Vermeer and not have to be concerned about their child being in a location where they're maybe not being cared for in a quality manner, or they're worried about whether or not they can afford to have their child in a work related childcare facility, and making those hard decisions about employment or caring for their child.
Thank you. And Renee.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm with Sukup Manufacturing, and Sukup Manufacturing is the world's largest family-owned grain bin and grain handling company. And we are based out of Sheffield, Iowa, a town of 1,100 people. And in the importance for this is in the last 4 years, we've seen a huge decrease in childcare providers. And so similar to what Teresa said, you know, it's vital to Iowa's workforce. It's vital to our communities to have quality childcare, and it's vital to our employees too. So we've experienced some loss in employees due to lack of childcare, and people have had to choose to go home. So this is very important to Iowa's workforce and our employee base too.
Great, thank you. Ashley?
Thank you. Here at Bonwego, we are the only nonprofit bilingual early childcare or early learning center in Des Moines, and we do not cap the amount of CCA families that we take in, which I think really amounts to how we're so full. We are at 98% optimal capacity right now with our year-round attendance. And as the family development director and assistant director, I deal with these families every day, and I see the challenges. The amount of families that aren't not eligible for CCA or cannot afford this without the CCA. We deal with these problems every day. So I think it's very important that we address it and help these working families.
Thank you. And Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. United Way of Central Iowa has been working to address childcare issues for well over 20 years now. In our Unite to Thrive framework, we see childcare as not only an early childhood success opportunity, but also an economic success opportunity. In addition to working to fund and advocate on behalf of a local coalition of nonprofit childcare centers, we also work to address the systems level policies at the state and federal levels that impact the accessibility and affordability of childcare here in Iowa.
Awesome, thank you. So to start off this conversation, I really want to get to some of the solutions, but I also want to start off by talking about how this issue has changed over the years. So I'd like to have some of you kind of look at in the past, if you look back a decade or maybe 2 decades ago, what progress do you think has been made on this issue? So I want to start with that, and then we can move into some of the current challenges. So starting off with some of the progress that you've seen over the past couple of decades. And Deann, I'll start with you.
So formerly I was at United Way. So some of the things Dave and I say might fit together pretty well. As he mentioned, United Way has been on this issue for 20 years. And when I joined over a decade ago, there was a real lack of understanding of the childcare issue. If you weren't in the age range where you had children in childcare, employers, policymakers, no one really understood the struggles of families. And we spent a lot of time trying to educate folks on why we all care about childcare, why it's a workforce issue, why it's a family issue, but also is impacted by the support that the community provides. So we've seen tremendous strides in that. We've addressed the childcare cliff, which I don't think 10 years ago, most policymakers could have told you what that was. Now they know. When Ashley talks about childcare assistance, people know what that is now. And the business community, as evidenced by our panelists, really understand this is a workforce issue. So that change in mindset has occurred over time. And we're now in a place where we can really go forward and have solutions because everybody's on the same page.
This is a little bit more recent history, but Renee, I know that Sukup has been involved with the childcare task force, and I was wondering if you could talk about, since that task force formed and more recently, what's happened since, and then later we'll get into what needs to happen. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emily Schmidt, our Chief Administrative Officer and Sukup family member, headed up the childcare task force with Governor Reynolds, and they came up with a lot of creative ideas. And I think that task force was, you had mentioned, like, what's some of the progress that has happened. And that task force, I think, was a huge progress just to see, like, what can we do? What changes can we make? And I think from some of that, some more state funding has come along. And while that's been great, there still needs to be a little bit more. In fact, Sukup was awarded a state grant in a partnership with a consortium of working together in our community, not just Sukup as a business, but we work together with the school district. We work together with a bank in town in order to create and build an infrastructure. And thanks to state funding, we were able to do that as a grant match. And so that task force really kind of spearheaded some of these ideas that we can continue to move forward. And we are in the process of building an infrastructure right now in Sheffield, Iowa, that will house close to 110 children in a childcare desert. The only other childcare that is in Sheffield that I know of right now only houses 36 kids. So there is a huge need for it. And so, yeah, what you said with this task force, it really kind of opened the doors to other ideas and public-private partnerships.
Teresa, what about you? What have you seen change over the years and how this issue has progressed?
I think the biggest progress I have seen is the conversation, to go back to Deann's statement. When I had children over 20 years ago, it didn't seem to be as big of a concern for business. It was the parents' responsibility to find that childcare solution for them. And we had resources, you could get a list, but today it's an actual conversation and considered part of our business plan and our benefit programs to offer this to our team members to ensure that they have quality care. I think the expectations of our childcare facilities has also improved. I think people look at that to be more of an educational start, an educational foundation for our children going into the school systems. And it is a great opportunity to grow future generations of Sukup team members and Vermeer team members, because they start to understand things that are important to us, STEM. They work with our engineers, they have access to other pieces of our business. And I think that gives them a little bit at a young age, opportunity to understand what the world has to offer to them.
Thank you. Related to that shift in mindset within the business community of seeing this as a business issue, I want to talk to our two providers here on, there are still obviously some, the statistic I cited in our gender issues survey this year, there are still some that don't see childcare as an issue, let alone a business issue. So I'd like to ask our two providers, if you're telling the business community why this should matter to them, what's your pitch to them? And we'll start with Bethany.
I think we've kind of already said it. Without us, it's a workforce issue. So, and I think without some of the measures that we have in place now, which have all been improvements, without those and those increasing, we're going to see less and less of that availability. I think I mentioned earlier in my opening that just finding quality preschool teachers is an issue. So that really limits my ability to take children into my center and provide quality programming. So whereas I could normally have twice as many kids, I could offer twice as many kids a quality program experience. I'm limited in that. So when I talk to the business community, I want them to see that without us, that there's a real issue in providing quality, safe programming for their employers. There are many, many childcare centers out there that maybe don't, that's not their importance, but for I know Dave said the coalition, which is I work very closely with United Way and the coalition and many, many other centers, safe and quality is such an important measure that we really strive to gain. And so I think what the business world needs to know is that without us, you're really restricting your own workforce. So I just want to just express the importance of that. Quality, safe childcare is super, super important for the business world.
Great, thank you. And Ashley, what's your pitch?
Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback off of Bethany, I think that's really important because not only are we serving the employees, the parents, but also we are working hand in hand with our future generation. We are teaching these kiddos, and like she said, it's very important to have quality child care because these are where we spend so much of the children's day with them. We want to teach them. We want to make sure we can give them the best that we can. And I think that to do that, partnering with a lot of people like Drake Early Head Start or United Way, the Equip team, these organizations that really help educate our providers, the people that already want to be here, that are already providing care, educating them and giving them those training and that support really help us address the children and really help advance them. Because again, this is our future generation and we really got to get them while they're in their younger years.
And I know one argument that we have heard sometimes is how can a business provide, childcare benefits while being fair to all of their employees? And Dave, I know we talked a little bit about this in the pre-event, so could you address that?
Certainly, an aspirational goal for all families at any income level is to spend no more than 7% of their income on childcare. And unfortunately, in our state, we are well out of that sort of safe zone. Childcare is the #1 expense for the typical Iowa family's budget. For a family of two with 2 kids in childcare, we're talking well over $1,293 a month. That far outpaces even housing costs for families. And so they do get into this place where do they work to pay for childcare or do they opt out of the workforce to save on those costs? And again, as you may be sending students off to college, childcare costs far more than sending your kiddo to any of our public institutions here in the state. And there are programs to help, such as grants and scholarships. Really, at the early age, when you're just starting out with a young family and kiddos, unless you qualify for the state's child care assistance program, you are footing this bill on your own. And, one of the things we've seen a movement across the country on behalf of employers is to start offering caregiving benefits or dependent care benefits to their employees. Companies can see improvements in employee satisfaction, engagement, retention, productivity. And one study found that companies offering these caregiving benefits were rewarded with that higher retention and employee productivity. There's been a number of company case studies as well that found that for every $1 that they spend on caregiving benefits, it results in a gain of $18.93. So quite a good ROI. And those caregiving benefits also starts addressing that unfairness between, for employees who do not have children or childcare needs. These benefits can also be used towards taking care of other dependents, including aging parents.
Great, thank you. Speaking of the return on investment piece of it, for businesses to take this on, there obviously has to be a look at their own bottom lines and how this fits in. So Renee, I'm just curious how Sukup has been doing that, kind of looking at it and from that aspect.
Yeah, when it comes to financials, I mean, going through the grant process, knowing that the state was going to help with half of the cost. However, with construction costs, it's significantly more than it was going to be. So we are looking into fundraising efforts from the community too, just so that it's not solely put on the employer, because we want this to be, specifically in Sheffield and specifically for Sukup, we want this to be a community based. But when it comes to employee benefits, we don't have anything right now where we are going to offer any additional benefits to employees to pay for the childcare or their childcare services that they will be going to at the center. But the fact that we're building it is opening up so many slots for them. So it is a benefit to be able to live and work in Sheffield and have your child right there if you need them. You know, and you never know what emergencies come across, or for families that need to access their kids quicker, instead of we pull from a 9-county radius for employees. So we've heard some stories of employees' grandparents taking the day off work to watch their kids. There's some families whose children are 45 minutes away for their childcare. I mean, that's just an extreme amount of time to have to go get your kid if there's anything, fever rises or anything like that. So as far as financial, a lot of that came into the grant process, and then we'll do some fundraising as well.
Got it. Teresa, what about for Vermeer? How does the financial side of this shake out?
Vermeer has fully financed our Yellow Iron Academy, located on our campus here in Pella. We do provide discounted tuition for our Vermeer team members. There are community folks who also bring their children there. But we understood very early in the process that this was not going to be a break-even type of a benefit. We understood very clearly that this was going to add to the benefit expense, but we felt it was important enough to take on that additional cost for the benefit of our team members. Much like Renee, we don't have anything in our benefit catalog or in our very recent conversations about adding additional dependent benefits. But we also realize that, even with the center we have on site, it's still an incredible expense for our team members. And it's something that we continue to watch and maintain an eye on.
Thank you. Deann, what are you seeing from a statewide perspective on some of the challenges that you think are still out there and important to address?
I'm glad that Renee mentioned the task force. My predecessor at IWF, Dawn Oliver Wyand, was on that task force. And one of the results of that was the funding of an employer engagement director by Iowa Economic Development Authority. So Sherry Penny serves in that role for IWF, and she has worked with lots and lots of companies and communities across the state to really understand and be that technical assistance connector, to say the state has dollars available, the community has needs, how do we fit those together and create public-private partnerships? So I think continuing to understand the problem we're trying to solve in any particular community, and it doesn't look the same in every community, continuing to strengthen and build the child care workforce itself. We're building the general Iowa workforce, but we also have to think about, as Bethany has said so clearly, that the child care workforce needs to keep pace with how we're building the overall Iowa workforce. And as Dave mentioned, the affordability. Parents in Iowa are paying about double what's considered affordable for childcare. So how can, at IWF, what we talk about is how can we continue to be the hub of the wheel to look at that holistically and find the solutions that make sense, and bring everybody to the table through public-private partnerships.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the affordability aspect, I know there's the challenge, of course, that of making it affordable for parents, while also realizing that the workforce needs to be paid well in order to give great care. So I want to talk with our providers again on what does that look like from your perspective on how do we find a balance there of keeping it affordable for the families, but also ensuring that the workforce is paid well. Ashley, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, ever since I was in childcare and started working here as a teenager, the main problem has always been the low pay. And that's something that we're constantly addressing. I know that we have been getting a lot of help in terms of grants and other partnerships that help us with like bonuses, so quarterly bonuses that really help those employees stay, as well as the new CCA guidelines that allow childcare providers to automatically qualify for CCA when sometimes that wasn't the case before. So we are constantly working towards it. It's something that isn't where it should be, and these teachers deserve a lot more than what they are, what we can currently afford to give them. But like I said, continuous education and training with these staff really help develop them and helps, them be more appreciated, and being appreciated is what they really need. And the parents really acknowledge it and help them as well. So it's something that we are really trying to address and constantly working towards by improving our quality of care for children here, and hopefully seeing the ripple effects get to our staff and employees.
Great. Bethany?
Sure. I think we have come a long way. I've been in childcare since I was maybe 20, so it's been a long time. So we have come a long way with pay and compensation and benefits. I know not that long ago, even health insurance was not always a guaranteed benefit for childcare workers. So benefits, paid time off, those kinds of things, I think have come a long way. We have implemented lots of different programs, which I think like the TEACH program with United Way and ECI, all those programs I think are really wonderful in helping teachers kind of get to that that professional level. I think probably one of the biggest problems is most centers, like I said, I'm NACE accredited and I'm a level 5 on the IQ4K Iowa rating system. So I do require teachers to do everything that a district teacher would do, implementing a curriculum and assessment and lesson planning, individualized goals, that kind of stuff. So I think maybe putting resources beforehand to specifically educating in the early childhood field before they even get into a center. I think putting some resources towards that would be helpful in treating them and those teachers in early childhood just as we would teach a district teacher and paid just as well. I don't know how we get there. I know that's probably kind of like the cart before the horse. Is that the saying? Something like that. But, I don't know. We've come a long way. I think it's going to be a forever problem. I know the pandemic raised some issues because now, fast food places, granted, it's not the same field, but you're just making more in different fields than you ever have before. So we were already a low paying field. Nonprofits like myself were having to really try to reach high to pay more just to get quality in. And so it's a problem that I have no answer for. I just know that it's come a long way. I believe that we will keep going further. I think partnerships with United Way and I think Ashley was kind of given some more early head start. Those kind of partnerships are really leading a path to helping compensation be equal with quality professionalism. I don't know. I just think maybe we need to put a little more resources in the beforehand and start recognizing the field as an educational field and maybe get somewhere with that.
Dave, from a policy standpoint, what kinds of things would you hope to see from the state to be able to address this balance between affordability and quality of care?
Well, I would be remiss in saying, as we talk about the workforce, the childcare workforce being like the critical barrier for addressing affordability and accessibility, they're the third lowest paid profession in our state. And so, as Bethany mentioned, there are so many more lucrative options out there that do not involve taking care of a room full of kiddos 5 days a week, which can be incredibly challenging work. We have come a long way in terms of the state's child care assistance program in, as Deann mentioned, the cliff effect. However, as we've worked to advocate and shift that program, there's a lot of changes that still need to be made. Just the most recent action by the legislature during this past session increased the state's reimbursement rates for those providers to 65 to 80% of the 2023 market rate. So they're already still behind the ball in terms of what it actually costs to provide that care. And so places like Oakridge that are accepting childcare assistance students without any limit, that is really a threat to their business model by taking on those kids, because they're not even really being reimbursed at the actual cost of providing that care. It is very much a charitable situation when you take on CCA kids. So we need to get those reimbursement rates to market level on an annual basis. If it's 2024, the reimbursement rates should be 2024 market rate reimbursement for providers, simple, plain as that. Another additional change that came through during last session in that same legislation was increasing the work requirements for families participating in the program from where it had been at 28 hours per week to 32 hours per week. And what we're hearing just since that change, that families are struggling to qualify. Many of these folks work multiple part-time jobs or even have a full-time job and are not being scheduled for 32 hours. So even if they're scheduled for 31 hours, they lose that CCA coverage. And so we really need to address flexibility there. We hear that that's a key barrier of getting a lot of families qualified. I mentioned that, aspirationally, we want families to only spend 7% of their total income. We are in support of even more families of higher income levels to be qualified for child care assistance, because again, this is just a critical workforce barrier and an incredibly important barrier for families as they are just starting out in their own careers. Early young families with young kiddos aren't earning as much salary. They have a trajectory in their career path that is going to stunt it at the very beginning. Another one is, I think, really important. I think we'll see some nods out of our providers here, but there was a pandemic era relief program that would pay childcare centers for enrollment as opposed to children actually being in attendance. And in the for-profit world, if you're planning on taking your kiddo to 5 days of childcare, but they're sick or other reasons, you're still paying for those 5 days of childcare. During the pandemic, we were paying on enrollment to those centers, so they were being reimbursed whether or not the kiddo was there or not. But we're back to that program expired. And so now we're back to where if a kiddo is not in the center, they don't get paid. And so many of our centers, 1 or 2 or 3 kiddos not showing up in a week could push them into the red, plain and simple. It's that tight of a margin business. And finally, I would say policy-wise, there's a lot we can work in this space, but quality and safety concerns. We're in a crisis here in childcare, and so we just can't act like everything's a fire and that we're firefighters. We have to be much more cautious about what kind of programs and expansions we do put in place to ensure that quality learning is not sacrificed, and safety. And a lot of that comes with professional, well-paid, benefited folks that are working in the profession who are committed and want to stay in the profession. A lot of the action that the legislature has been moving has been to allow more youth to engage in childcare settings, as in 16 and 17-year-olds can provide full-time care. We worry about that. First and foremost, do they have the education, experience, training to provide that quality early learning experience and safe care? But also we're burning out people. If they're 16 or 17 years old, by the time they hit 18 or 19, they may have continued in the profession. By that point, though, they may have burned out. They did not have the support that they needed. And again, they'll look for more lucrative opportunities that exist.
I wonder if Bethany or Ashley, if you all have any thoughts related to the age there of the providers that Dave was just mentioning.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. We are looking for quality professional teachers. not that a 16 or 17-year-old can't get there, but at 16 or 17, I don't know that's exactly what I'm comfortable with, especially he did not mention this, but the ratio is actually raised too. So teachers are able to have more children than we just previously were a couple of years ago. So not only are you adding more children, the providers are younger. So that for myself, that sparks a safety issue for me, a safety concern and quality concern. But like he said, a burnout concern. Do I want this person to last a month or two after they've just been overwhelmed? Maybe don't have the proper training, don't have the experience. No, you know, I want to maybe build them. So that would not be ideal for my center, the ratios or the younger age limit. That would not be ideal, and that would not be something I would prefer to do.
Ashley, anything you'd add on that?
Yeah, so I definitely see the concern. We have plenty of 17-year-olds here at Conmigo, and honestly, we absolutely love them, especially for summer field trips when we just need lots of hands on deck, and especially at the swimming pool. So they are great, and it's really nice that we're able to hire them at such a young age, especially when we can really instill the importance of early education into them early enough to where they can dedicate themselves to this and understand just how important it is to play a role and be intentional with it. So it does require lots and lots of training and a lot of side-by-side training, leading by example, and that does take an effect on us daily when these teenagers are, you know, still in high school during the day, so they can only come to us after school ends, and they only get 2 hours of training every day. So that training really takes a very long time. It can take months rather than 2 weeks. So it does get a little harder, especially when they can't be alone in the room with any of the kiddos. Not that we would leave them alone, but although they can be in ratio with someone 18 and older, it's also that something that we always have to watch for. So I can definitely see the benefits and the pros and cons from it. But I do think that if we get young people interested in early education early enough, that we are also investing into having quality care providers in the future.
Great. I wanted to ask if any of you are thinking about, I know there's a number of school districts in the state who have gone to 4-day school weeks, and I'm wondering if any of you are or have thought at all about the impact that might have on childcare, if that's something that's come up in your wheelhouses.
We don't do after school, so we do just preschool, but I know in our organization we have an after school program, so I don't know too much about that, but I know I can see how that would pose some issues for staffing again, for a space. Yeah, so I don't directly have to deal with that, but I can see that there would be some concerns and maybe some issues coming up with that.
Yeah, we also don't do like before or after school care, but we do a summer program. And in the summer program, we do have 6 to 11-year-olds, and these are usually the older siblings of the kiddos that we have here year round. And I know in the summer, parents are so thankful that we have the program because they don't have anyone to leave their kiddos with. They're still too young to stay home alone. They still have to work full day weeks, and they don't get that summer off as everybody else does. So I can only imagine that when schools choose to go to 4-day weeks, that it's going to put a huge strain on families, and maybe other family members will have to stay home and take care of kids, because I don't see how providers can provide just 1-day care out of the week for lots of families, like Bethany was saying, with staffing and with the space.
Got it. Thanks. And Deann, I'm going to direct the question that was just in the chat about if there have been any communities that have found a way to provide free or low cost childcare. What examples have you seen in the state?
Thank you. I saw Christine's question, and our focus at IWF has been sort of flipping that question around. So not so much free and low cost care, but raising wages for childcare workforce without having to put that burden on childcare centers. And the way that we've done that is we're supporting 13 communities or counties, kind of depends, throughout the state on a wage enhancement program. So there was a matching grant from the state. The community or county raised funds among business partners, individuals, companies, raised funds. Those were matched by the state for a wage enhancement program that allows childcare providers, registered childcare providers in those areas to tap that fund to raise wages for their childcare workforce. So if the business model of the childcare facility doesn't allow them to pay more, which for all the reasons you've heard, that's usually true, the community can become part of investing in that workforce through a public-private partnership matched with state dollars to raise those wages. And we have lots of kudos for that as far as recruitment and retention of staff in childcare. So the small difference in pay makes a big difference in retaining folks and recruiting them into working with kids, because people who do this work love kids. They want to be in childcare because they love kids, but they also have their own household to manage, and they will leave for $1 or $2 into a different field if it makes a difference for their own family, even though they love kids. And so I think this wage enhancement program is win-win-win all the way around. It gets everybody to the table. It gets everybody invested. It invests in that childcare workforce, and it keeps the people who love kids doing the work.
Thank you. Renee and Teresa, we have you on here today because you are part of businesses that have begun addressing this, but it's taken, I know, some private-public partnerships. And so I'm just curious, for a community or a business that has not started this at all but wants to, what is your recommendation for them on getting such a partnership or getting started on this? Teresa, you want to go first?
I think it's really important that to create those partnerships, you have to be very proactive. You have to find the resources in your community. Don't stay small either. Pella is a 10,000 person community, but go past that. Look at the next town, look at the next town, pull every resource and every business that you can, where you're also pulling in your team members, and have open and honest conversations. Make them part of it. So it's not just a business trying to attract talent, it's a business trying to work with the community. And I think that is the key to being able to collaborate, to find opportunities, and to really create that experience. We're very fortunate in Pella to have multiple childcare options. So I feel, as Deann said, every community is a little bit different, but Vermeer did a lot of work working within our county and within our community, talking to different providers, whether they be in-home or an established center, talking with the schools to understand what is necessary to do this. But I think it has to be very much that effort of saying, we want to work with you, and we want to work with you on behalf of our community, not just behalf of us as a business.
Renee?
Teresa answered a lot of the same things I would say, but I love how she stated being proactive, but also it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I'm really thinking about how, I know that the town of Sheffield was working with Iowa State University and doing a research study on the need of childcare, and they started that. Don't quote me on the exact date, but it was before 2020. So it could have been like 2017, 2019. And they were looking at what the need was in Sheffield and the surrounding areas. So it is definitely that marathon of working with others in the community, looking at the other businesses, tapping into some of the surrounding areas. And yeah, I mean, it takes a while to figure out how you can all work together, and is everybody have the same mission moving forward? So yeah, having that proactive approach, working together are some of the ways that you can really start to make it happen. And it'll slowly move. Once you get that cog moving, it will slowly start to move faster.
And I would encourage any business or community to use the resources that are available. You know, Iowa Women's Foundation has done so much work creating a foundation for communities and employers and care providers to start building on this already. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting, which is a great piece. You know, United Way, talk to them about what you can do from a legislative perspective as well, and work with your local providers. And they are care providers and they are professionals. And that's how you need to approach it as well.
One last thing I'd like to add is that we at Sukup did an employee survey, but then the town of Sheffield also did a town survey, just asking the simple question of, you know, would you switch your child to a childcare in Sheffield? Do you need childcare? What are the ages of your kids? And we just did a lot of those questions to understand how badly it was needed. And it was like a 90% response rate of, yes, this is definitely needed. So that's why it was just an easy decision to say, yes, we have to do this.
I wanted to just interject. I saw Mary answer or asked a question. And since I brought up wage enhancement program, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. This was a pilot program that was for communities who had already done what Teresa and Renee had said. They were on their way to building something and they were ready to do a community investment. So the matching dollars went to those in a pilot program. And we're closely watching and measuring data, both qualitative and quantitative, to tell the story of why this pilot was successful. So stay tuned on that.
Great. I also wanted to ask about both Oakridge and Conmigo, the culturally specific care that you both provide and the need for that. If you could just address, you know, the need that you're seeing in that, and if there's any specific challenges that come up because of that.
Yeah, so here at Conmigo, like I said, we are the only nonprofit bilingual daycare. So that means we are completely bilingual, our curriculum, our staff is bilingual, and we just fully immerse all the children into it. And so because of that, we do see that we serve a lot more of the Latinx Hispanic community. Actually, 69% of the families that we serve are Hispanic or identify as Hispanic. And so because of that, like I said, we don't cap CCA, and so most of our families are on CCA. About 81% of them are actually on CCA. And unfortunately, a lot of families that are excluded or do not have accessibility to CCA are families that we serve that may have that their legal status may not allow them to be or get CCA or qualify for it. So thankfully, we have like a scholarship with Women United that really help families like that. I think that is one of the hardest things, is having so many families come in who can't afford it and cannot apply to anything or don't qualify for any help. And so unfortunately, a lot of those families cannot bring their children here and have to stay home, have to find other ways to provide.
Thank you. Bethany, what do you see at Oakridge?
Oakridge as an organization or neighborhood is pretty diverse. I think, don't quote me, but I know at our last annual report, there was 26 languages spoken on our campus. So a huge variety of diverseness. And so of course, we also see that in Oak Academy, which is our preschool program. I will say I am fortunate. I do have staff that do speak some of the languages of my children. I want the children to see themselves represented in the staff. So I do look for that when I am trying to hire teaching staff. It does present a problem. One of the problems I have seen over the years is culturally, I don't think people always think preschool is necessary. You know, it's important to stay home with mom for those first years until they go to preschool. And so culturally, just having people understand that preschool is important. That's pretty good indicator of how they will be successful and prepared in the future. So that's a little difficult to get sometimes into the families of our neighborhood, just that understanding that it's really important. But second of all, the language, like I said, there's 26 language spoken. So children do often come to us with no English, or maybe an older sibling who does speak for them or their parents. So the language is a little bit of a barrier. Fortunately, we know that children that young do learn English pretty easily. So we do find that they find English throughout the year. They're pretty well in learning English. They're pretty averse to learning it by the end of the school year. But our main concern is we want them on par and ready for school, just like any other student in the Des Moines area. So we really work hard in our program for school readiness. So we really work hard on preparing them for kindergarten. We work with partners, work with Des Moines Public Schools. I have some of the 2 Des Moines Public School classrooms in my program. So we work really hard with making sure that they are, in spite of those challenges, on par and ready for kindergarten in the Des Moines district. So it is a challenge. There's lots of different barriers. We have different programs in Oakridge that help with. We do have a adult and family program, so that's super beneficial in helping with my families and getting the message of preschool importance across. Any type of information we need them to interpret for us. So we do have some resources that make it a little easier, but it's challenging just having the different languages and cultural barriers. And also, like I said, they've said we accept almost all childcare assistants. So making sure those kiddos are ready for school, just like anybody else, it's a challenge.
I think something else that really impacts the families that we get to serve is the CCA eligibility. So we serve lots of families who are eligible for CCA because it really helps them afford childcare. But the other half, or the other families that we serve, are the very high income families that can't afford to do it without the CCA. I think the families right in between that area that are making too much to be eligible for CCA, but also can't afford paying CCA or paying tuition completely out of pocket. So all of those families are falling through the cracks. And unfortunately, we don't get to serve a lot of those families.
Thank you both. It's hard to believe we're almost done with our hour here. So I'm going to give you each a quick moment to do a quick takeaway as we wrap things up and close out here at 1. I also just wanted to acknowledge, I know there were some things in the chat that we didn't quite get to, and we'll take note of those things and hope to help answer them in future coverage, or maybe our speakers can connect with you. So let's go through one takeaway. Dave, we'll start with you.
Well, I think many people heard here that it is the workforce that is really the key challenge in this space right now. Attracting and retaining quality talent that wants to be in this work, making sure that they're professional, that we can provide a good wage, benefits. We support a number of programs. Deann mentioned a number of programs, but really it needs to sort of be across the entire ecosystem of childcare, where we really look at professionalizing those folks. It's also been a rather dynamic year for us in the past year for United Way. We've been really working with the Polk County Board of Supervisors to study this issue, really kind of help our policymakers understand that it is a critical issue. And so in turn, they did award us $2.6 million in grant funding to address affordability and accessibility with our local child care coalition here in the metro region. We've also engaged with federal partners such as the National Fund. And one of those things that we received a grant for is, again, to work on the workforce, increasing worker satisfaction, promoting quality work environments, increasing those wages, because this is a complex problem to solve. Many of our business partners would say, when you look at the math, when you look at the business model, it doesn't make sense, and it really doesn't. But again, it is one of those critical things that are necessary for any business that wants to open a new factory or plant or manufacturing location. Nuclear families with kiddos won't just move there. They don't have extended family to take care of the kids. We need to really think of childcare as that sort of first entrance point, the welcome mat, if you will, as you're trying to attract and retain new talent.
Great. Renee?
I think one of my takeaways and something that I just wanted to share as an insight is just be creative. Come up with different ideas of how public and private, how communities can work together. One thing I didn't share was that another way for us to create some slots and opportunities of childcare slots for our employees was we worked with the Mason City Chamber. So think about chambers, economic development. And we were able to reserve some slots in Clear Lake and Mason City because our employees come from those locations. And so that we always have some kind of an opening, and families need that. So thinking about our workforce and not only thinking about how childcare and workforce, but just economic development in general. I mean, Iowa always talks about how can we bring more workforce to Iowa? Well, some of those barriers are childcare. So just one of my takeaways is think about creative ideas and present those to your community, to the businesses in your community. I think all of our ears are open. We're wanting to listen. We're wanting to invest. We're wanting to help our employees and continue to grow Iowa.
Deann?
This is a good segue to what Renee just said. So I think there are so many spokes of the wheel doing great work and making a difference. And it's important that we all stay connected. It's important that we convene and we learn what others are doing. So today's panel is a great example of that. But communities are eager to know what other communities are doing. Economic development professionals are eager to learn from one another. So to that end, if you've liked this hour, we can give you a whole day of it. On November 19th, Iowa Women's Foundation will host our second Iowa Solutions Summit on childcare. So it really is a whole day of learning and sharing and convening together to stay in touch because we have so much to learn from each other.
Thank you. Teresa?
I believe that we have touched on the key that every community is different. Every organization's needs are different. Every parent's needs are different. So I think it is, as Renee said, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, an ultra marathon. And it's not the flavor of the month. It is something that we need to invest in as employers and as communities. And keep going the distance. And we need to appreciate that this isn't about childcare circa 1985. This is about creating our future workforce by promoting the care providers as the professionals they are, supporting the resources that provide them the backgrounds, the educations, and the wages. And we need to really work together, all of us. It can't be siloed. It has to be the Iowa Women's Foundation, the United Way of Central Iowa, providers and employers coming together to support this field and this cause in front of our legislature to make sure that they are doing what we need them to do to continue to promote childcare in the state of Iowa, or people will leave the state.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that we are working with the most vulnerable, most loved population, and we're really doing this for the little kiddos because this is our future generation, and that's where we need to start in early education. So thank you to all the programs, all the partnerships that work with us and help this, make this possible. I know there's a lot of work, but I know a lot has been done, and we are making progress every day. So I'm very thankful for all of that.
Thank you. And last but not least, Bethany.
Oh, I was going to say something similar. I think, yes, we have lots of issues that we still need to work on. However, I am amazed in the 23 years that I've been in the field, how far we have come. And I think we have people's ears. I think we have legislature's attention. I think we're making progress and we're always advocating. So keep advocating.
Great. Well, thank you to all of our speakers for being here and sharing your thoughts. And of course, thanks to our audience for tuning in today. There's going to be a recording of this. We've said that in the chat, but it's at fearlessbr.com/events. And you can also sign up for our newsletter so that you can stay up to date on these issues as we cover them throughout the year. We also want to make you aware of some of our upcoming events. We have our Women of Influence Awards from 4 to 7 p.m. on August 1st at the Marriott in downtown Des Moines. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to join us for our next Fearless Focus, where we will be talking about leadership and mentorship. And that's being held on October 3rd from noon to 1. If you have any story ideas or feedback on today's event, please reach out to us. And if you're interested in supporting work like this, we hope that you will reach out to Chris Konetsky if you're interested in advertising and sponsorship opportunities. We want to thank you all for attending today and hope you have a great day.